Wednesday again for the Relationship Gumbo Podcast Live. So what I want you guys to do is share and invite this with your friends and family. We have a special guest. We have an extra special topic. We're going to talk about the man up culture, man up or open up, right? It's about toxic masculinity. We're going to get into that. Give me about a couple of seconds here to make sure that everything came up, and then we're going to get right into it. We're not going to keep you too long, but we want to make sure that you are informed and understand what's going on out here. Hopefully everybody's washing their hands and washing everything. Wash everything, not just your hands. I know this coronavirus thing is getting serious, and everybody's kind of scrambling and doing, some sane stuff, some insane stuff, like with this whole toilet paper thing. But do what you got to do. Make sure you take care of your family. So what I'm going to do is what we normally do with this podcast. I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure that everything was coming up on all the streams. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope at the same time. So I wanted to make sure everything is cool. So what we do with this live podcast is I'm going to pause for 3 seconds. We're going to start the podcast. And then at the end of the podcast, I'm going to pause for 3 more seconds, and then we can speak freely. If you have any questions or comments through the show, just type them in and I'll try to add them in if I feel that they're pertinent to the topic. But other than that, once again, just share and invite. And we are going to get into this. So give me 3 seconds, and then we're going to start the podcast, and we're going to introduce our special guest for the night. And welcome to another episode of the Relationship Gumbo Podcast. My name is Derek Jones, and I am your host. I'm a certified life coach, an engineer, a strategist, and a mental health advocate. And tonight, we're going to talk about that ever elusive toxic masculinity. And what I like to title it as man up or open up, because as men, we have a decision a lot of times. We either going to man up or we're going to open up and tell you how we feel. So we're going to talk about that. Excuse me. So tonight we have an extra special guest who's actually a friend of mine named Mr. Andre St. Clair. He's been on the show a couple times, but not in this new format. We got a new format now. We got new topics. We're going to talk about this. This topic falls under communication primarily. So it's still under the umbrella of Relationship Gumbo. We just trying to see how we can make this thing work. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and we're going to bring him up. Mr. Andre St. Clair. He does a lot. Like, I'm going to let him tell you what he does with music and entertainment. So let me bring him up here. So hold on 1 second. All right, Mr. St. Clair, can you hear me?
I can. How you doing, brother?
All right. So what I want you to do for our audience is to let them know who you are, a little bit about what you do and what you got going on.
Yeah, no doubt. Andre St. Clair, better known as ADST or ADST Music. Primarily, I'm a music producer, but I also own a multimedia entertainment company by the name of ADST Media. Primarily functions in a lot of different ways as far as helping artists, as far as with releasing their products, as well as marketing, promotion, publicity, things of that nature. Basically, almost acting like, if you would say, at A&R, servicing as an A&R component, helping artists as far as in helping them to increase their reach, and also to help them as far as monetization with their products as well.
Cool. Like I said, he does a lot, right? So
yeah.
And if we'll talk about how to contact him on the lighter end of the show. But I wanted Andre to come on because I know he interacts with a lot of people on a daily basis, and I wanted to have somebody on here that had a lot of interaction so that we can talk about this topic, so you can really see how this toxic masculinity, this man up, I call it the man up culture, how it affects us throughout like our journey every day in life, like as men. So the first thing I wanted to do, hold on for me 1 second here. The first thing I want to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what it actually is. So this whole, and I like to call it man up because that's what we say. We don't normally say toxic masculinity like to each other in the street. But what it is it's kind of like it's what we're taught. Like, I believe what we're taught, like from a child, suck it up, man up, don't
Right.
show your
Right.
emotions.
Right.
You're gonna be all right. Stop
Mhm.
saying all that stuff. We don't do that because you a boy, you're not a girl, and that kind of thing. And then we soak that in, and what in turn happens is that when we do feel things, we don't have the audience or the forum to be able to share it. And so, like,
Yeah.
even like with what you do with music and just dealing with the
Mhm.
music industry and even like hip hop, there's a like
Mhm.
hip hop historically has been, super extra, masculine and hard. And I know it's changing now, but it, when you're doing I guess my question to you is when you're out here, because we're gonna do this in stages. We have like different categories. So first we're gonna talk about the environment and society and like our friends and people that we're around all the time. So that could be in business, family, friends. Then we're gonna break it down into relationships, and then we're gonna break it down into like how we deal with it as parents. But on an everyday basis, do you feel the pressure to not share how you feel, or is it something that you feel like in 2020 that you're free to kind of express, I'm hurt by this, I don't like this, or do you feel the pressure to be super macho in
Mhm.
the arenas that you're in?
I would say if you asked me this question maybe a year or two ago, I would say yes. I think the thing is that as we progress as men and we take those things that you say as far as manning up and whatever, get over it, that type of those type of things that we were taught as kids. I think that for me at this point in my life, or rather what happened with me is that those ideologies didn't work for me. And so as such,
Right.
as a byproduct of that, other things occurred, such as um, uh, having panic attacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, as far as high blood pressure, anxiety, really, having an anxiety disorder. So those were kind of like those byproducts because you really didn't have the tools to kind of understand and identify your
Right.
feelings. So for me, what has helped as far as going to counseling, also going to different groups as far as being able to discuss an open dialogue and speak freely. So because of that, it's as far as in 2020 for me, it's easier to communicate. I think by being able to do that, it allows me to be free. It also, as far as a transfer, not want to say a transfer of emotions, but to be able to just to release. So
Mm-hmm.
being able to speak freely, so I've, a lot of times I've spoke about it recently, even on social media. So when I'm at the events and everything, people are like, oh, you good, are you okay? And so, I don't have any fear of that because I'm not worried about judgment. But there are a lot others that they don't have those tools, and so because of that, we react to what is easy. So a lot of times, that very well may come out as anger,
Yep.
aggression. And a lot of times it can result in depression,
Right.
and the depression can manifest itself in different ways. So I think that for me, even regardless of if I am having some type of anxiety, I think the ability to be cognizant and to know, okay, this is happening. Let me work through it. And so, what is my first tool? Calm down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first. That's the first thing. Okay, calm down. So whether that's taking a deep breath, count to 10. Whether that, believe it or not, if it's like, oh, let me get a drink real quick. But there's different things that to identify. And so as that's going on, that's what's helping me as far as being able to kind of settle down and to
Yeah.
recognize it. And it's funny, and then it kind of turns itself into anxiety. But like I said, because of who I am and I know it, I know how to work through it, and I know, okay, I know what this is. And the unfortunate thing is that I have to get over it. So once I push through it, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like an episode, if you would say, right? And then after that, everything is kind of normal again, right? So, but that's how I identify. That's how I identify. But you have to realize, there are a lot of guys that are out there that they don't, they don't know how to identify that. So what they
Yeah.
do is they identify it in different ways, and then, when others see certain things that are happening, a lot of times they may, make fun of it or whatever, and then, like I said, that's when that aggression, that's when that anger comes out. So a lot of times you resort to whatever defense mechanism that is, and a lot of times that defense mechanism might be anger, in that sense of where you're using that to control.
Yeah.
To control the situation, to control your feelings, to control how you feel.
Yeah. So just to piggyback on that, what a lot of people know, but it's very rarely like talked about, is when you grow up with that pressure of not wanting to look weak and not wanting to look like you can't share how you feel, and you have, like, you surrounded by your friends and your boys, and you talking, and you feel away, but you can't really say how you really feel because they're going to judge you. And then, like, a lot of times, like in my experience, it could come from family, but then when you have that pressure for so long, even when sometimes when you run into somebody that's giving you the open forum, you still don't do it because you're so used to hiding it. And so it just becomes a cycle. And what I always talk about on my show is the stacking of emotions, even negative emotions. When we keep, like you were saying, when we keep holding that stuff in, eventually that pressure cooker is going to burst in some way, shape, or form. Your behavior, it might be anger, it may be how you treat somebody, it may be, it's a lot of different things. And, we're going to talk about a couple of categories, like I said, but the environment as a whole, and I feel like it's changing a little bit. Like, people are starting to talk more about like mental health and having open forums now, but it's a really serious thing, and it affects a lot of us. And I don't think that I know people talk about it, but I don't think we talk about it enough, and I don't think it's nurtured enough.
I agree.
So,
I definitely agree.
So, and even like I think about like my dad, right? The first time I saw him cry, he was in the hospital bed. And so my first reaction was, he's crying because he doesn't want to be in the hospital, or he's crying because he's in pain. And when he talked to me, this is what he said: I don't want you to see me like this, weak. That's what his biggest worry was. It wasn't about why he was in the hospital or getting better. He did not want me and my brother to see him weak. And I was like, what are you talking about? You need to get better. Just calm down. He was like, I just don't want you to see me like this. And that made me realize that he's gone his whole life holding all of that in and not really being able to say, I feel sad, or I feel, I feel hurt. And that's the story of a lot of us. And then we wonder, why this person is walking around with, certain behaviors. And even people who, I always talk about, people who we call players, right? It comes from something that you wasn't able, like it's some kind of trauma that you haven't even been able to release. So you're treating hurt people. And the biggest hurt you can have is to hide how you feel and just walk around like that every day. So we're going to go into the second stage of this, which is where a lot of us fail. And it's sometimes, like I said, it's self-imposed. Romantic relationships is number 2. And how we function as boyfriends, as husbands, as partners, in romantic relationships. And no matter how, I know it's 2020, whatever you identify as, it is what it is. You gotta really think about communication and how difficult communication is. And I'm going to talk about men because this is kind of like the elephant in the room. I can't say that it's only men, but I'm going to say it's mostly men because of how society has portrayed us. You have to think about a man in a romantic relationship being able to communicate how he feels, but like you said, without the tools, because he needs to be strong and he can't look weak. And even for me, in some of my relationships in the past, the women were the ones that were telling me to man up. When I tried to
Yeah.
give, to show that I was hurting, it was like, just stop playing, stop being a victim, man up. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So then what that does to you is when you thought that you had to open forum with the person that you supposedly love, shut you down, then you don't bring it up again. And now you're
Yeah.
hiding it again and stacking the
Mhm.
emotions. And now you start to become, and always talk about this, you transform into something else. And now you're the person that dodges the confrontation and the communication. And then ultimately you don't even, you don't have a safe place to even open up. And that's the story of a lot of us. We don't feel safe, or something happened to make us not feel safe, and we just choose not to go down that path again because that door is closed. So have you experienced this in I already know if you have male DNA, you've been through it, but have you experienced this in your relationships where you felt like you were unable to really share how you really felt, because you felt the pressure to kind of just man up and just suck it up and just, get it done?
Yeah. I would say in a prior relationship, and the person had a alpha personality type. So so it's kind of like when you have two alphas together, it's not necessarily always a good thing. And so, like you're saying, in those moments where you're dealing with frustration, and then you try to convey and communicate that, it translates as far as being weak. And so, with that alpha personality type, that's kind of like, in a lot of cases, that may be translated into, I want to say, like kind of like like a boisterous rah rah type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, like you're saying, it's like, man up, or man F up, or what have you. And so, yeah, you're right. Exactly what you're saying is very true. And so, also as a byproduct of that, you become defensive by nature.
Yep.
And so now anything that has happened from that timestamp, it only gets worse, right? So what at least what happened to me is that I'll get defensive, and so and then in being defensive, what happens? I shut everything down. I only listen to what you said, and it's like not only am I defensive of what you're saying right now, but I'm also using that prior situations where it's fueling me. And so in that sense, it comes out it comes out in a way of anger, aggression, and then right there, just it's bad communication on both parts, because then what happens? That's when the argument ensues. And so, unfortunately, what happens is that when you're trying to show vulnerability, and a lot of time, I'm pretty sure most women know, but when you are dealing with whatever you're dealing with in the world, as a man, especially as an African American man, and then to come home and then to deal with issues in the home front, as far as if you're trying to express yourself, and then when you get that type of reaction where it is displayed as far as being weak or things of that nature, it's like you don't have any peace. So now you create a toxic environment in your house, because there's not a level playing field for either one of you. And so, unfortunately, it just it just gets worse and worse. So for me, that's what happened. Like I said, just a lot of arguments, a lot of screaming, and a lot of shouting. And at the same time, the issue's not getting resolved. And a lot of times what will happen in the end is that, okay, you will walk away. But even when you come back to it, if you don't have the set of tools, a lot of times you're just putting a Band-Aid over it. You're making up. And then a lot of times, because of you being in that situation, you're used to it, right? You don't really, a lot of times, because of certain things, you don't look at it in an objectionable way.
Yeah.
So because of that, you're not dealing with the issues at hand. So it just keeps going on, and it's like, okay, we're back on this happy path, but you're really not, because the underlying issues are still there.
Yep.
And it's going to continue to happen. So it's just like a rat race, it's just an endless continued cycle. And so, they say what the definition of insanity is, it's doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately that's what happens. But when we settle and we get used to certain things, we believe that, okay, this is how it is. And then we start making up excuses for where we're at in certain things as far as the relationship with, oh, okay, basically at that point you start settling. But yeah, I know I'm kind of getting off track a little bit.
That's
but
cool. That's
but yeah,
open dialogue, man. We good.
Yeah, but yeah. So in my experience, yes, I've experienced it. In that relationship, there were no tools that were given. It got worse, and then of course, eventually, both, we decided to split. And and that was probably the best at that point. But a lot of times, familiarity a lot of times brings people back together. And a lot of times that's not a good it's not a good thing.
It's not. It's not. And it's so like I know there's a lot of like a lot of women that's listening to this, and this is what you got to understand. The reason why we're doing this, it's not to say that the behavior that the man does is right or wrong, but that man has a side, and that man has emotions and feelings, even though we don't traditionally think about it like that. It's just a window into the other side, right? And when like Dre was saying, sometimes it comes out as anger. So if you walk into a room and you see the anger coming from the man, then you're like, okay, it's toxic, but you never really get a window into the why. You never get a window into like the origin story of why this person is like this and why they react in this way. And that's what I wanted to do with this show. And with every show, I want you to understand how it feels. I want the men to be able to hear another man say how he feels. And I want the women to really listen and understand that there's another human being, no matter how hard they may be underneath it all. There's a little kid in there that's still fighting to come out that never got a chance to do it. And so when you have these dialogues and you say man up, he's going to shut down. That's why I called it man up or open up. We got a choice as men. We can do one or the other. And most of the time, open up is not a choice. And so this is what it looks like when you have those arguments that Dre was talking about. Once we get to a point where we're arguing with you and we know, as a man, I'm not really going to be able to tell you. Let's keep it real. I'm gonna keep it real. I'm gonna give you.
Yeah, I was about to say because I was about to go there,
but I really want. I need people to not just listen. I need you to feel this and understand how this really happens. Because I am also an engineer, so I need to give you the layers, right? When you have that argument, and the man, if you and the man are going back and forth, I'm talking to you, ladies, so you can understand when we see that we're not able to really be totally honest with you because of the reaction that's coming back, we shut down. Now the emotion that we had, the honesty and the truth that we had is now buried. And once we bury it, this is our main goal at this point. It's just to get you to shut up and get it over with so we can move on, because we cannot be honest. Because if we gave you the honesty, sometimes it may blow up even further. So we keep it down instead of having the tools, like Dre said, to be able to have and this is overall communication, because both it's a tennis match between the two. But as a man, once we shut down, then now we got to say whatever we got to do to get it over with. And I know that some fellas may be like, stop saying that. But at the end of the day, if we don't communicate better, all of this stuff crumbles. I don't care if you've been in a relationship for 2 days or 20 years, you still got to come back to being able to have open and honest dialogue without the fear that you're going to have to go on the defense because the other person isn't really hearing you. And so I just wanted to say that because we retreat back into masculine man mode when we know that we aren't able to really get our point across. And I know before you people come for me in the comments, I know sometimes that the toxic behavior, isn't warranted, or the man is gonna he's wrong for what he did. All I'm doing is giving you a window into the psyche, whether you believe it's right or wrong. I just need you to understand that there is a position. That's why when I talk about players, I talk about what the player thinks. And then you can decide whether it's right or wrong later. But I want you to understand how this happens. So we're going to move into the next topic. The next topic is also big. Parents and kids, and your relationship with your kids, and how that man up toxic behavior spills over to them, especially with boys, right? And I don't have a boy, but I used to be one. so back in the day, that's all we heard in society. Today I feel like it's a little looser, like people are a lot freer to, especially little boys are freer to kind of express how they feel. But how does that I would say, even now in today's society, like how do you see just out in the world, like still there's fathers out there still just kind of like, shut up and take it, man up. Like, I know it happens because we're not that too far removed from, our parents' generation. So it's still there. But I've seen so many like stuff online and stuff out in the streets where the little kid just wants to say, I'm hurt, and they can't.
Yeah. So yes, it still happens. When we talk about our parents, like was first starting with us, right? A lot of times our parents want us to be what they weren't. So, we could take it from the standpoint of what's the tradition, sports, right?
Yep.
Being a ladies' man and these are the things of nature, and this is where really the programming occurs as far as what they want you to be. And then a lot of times you do those things and it really isn't, within you, and you may go through the process, and a lot of times you see in the end, as far as in adulthood, other things manifesting, right? And then as far as with me directly, again, you feel the you feel as far as the byproduct of all of that. But as far as with children today, I have a stepson. I would say that initially, yes, did I want those things for him? Yes, but I would say that as I grew to know him, and over the years, I understood who he was as a person, and I knew, okay, he wasn't an athlete, but do we want him to play sports? Do we encourage him to play sports? Yes. Did he play sports? Yes, but not to the detriment of where it was like, you better go out there and do this and do that. No, it wasn't that. And we did that really in the early part, as far as his preteen years and before that. And I think that's when at that point for him, that's when it was fun. But understanding your child's personality type and what they gravitate to, and then nurturing that. I think that because of me being cognizant of my experience with my father, I try to do the same thing with him so that he understood, that I was in tune to him and what he wanted. Because, like you say, they have to have a voice, and then, I've been in those times, and I've seen it where it's kind of like, well, I don't want to do that, or that's not, within them. A lot of kids, unfortunately, they may not be that child. They may not have that form of progression. So it's kind of figuring that out and championing that. But does that still occur? Yes. Yes, it occurs every day.
And that I'm such a proponent of, whether you're a kid or an adult, is just becoming self-aware, right? Just understanding. And as a kid, they don't know who they're going to be, but you can really look at who they are in that moment. And sometimes when they say, I don't want to, then that's their truth. And you gotta really listen to that and stop trying to make them be what you couldn't, like you said, what you couldn't be and what you wanted to be. And you're pressuring them to get into something that they really don't want to do, especially little boys, because now you are reiterating the culture of just shut up and do it. Be a
That's where the
man.
trauma
I'm gonna
begins.
be a man and I'm 6. Like you can't like you
Yeah, that's
like
where the trauma. That's what I said. That's where the programming. That's where the trauma begins, and you really don't know it, but that's where it begins when because you're trying to imprint what you believe they should be, and instead of championing, if they want to, if they're curious and want to move forward towards something, then yes, you encourage it and you allow them to do it. There are certain things, of course, that, hey, I don't want to do it. They need to do it, or you could tell, okay, they just need a pushing. And there is a way about going about it. Sometimes you may have to be a little bit aggressive. There's a difference, but there's also a difference when that child, that is not that child. Like for example, a child that's not into contact sports, but you're forcing them to do it, and then and because you don't accept your child for who they are at that point, that's when I'm saying that's when all of a sudden you're imprinting you're imprinting things as far as that discouragement, all these different things, it's really, you're traumatizing the child at that point, but you don't know that.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, I talked about in prior podcasts, is that trauma that they got when they were 5. If it goes unresolved, it's still there when they're 30 and 40. And
hey, that's me.
and what I always tell people is, people will say, well, I didn't realize I had it. All you got to do is look at your behavior trends and the things that you do, and it will always show you a picture of where you came from. And you can always point it back to a point in trauma. Like if you, like sometimes I keep saying this, but it's real. Like if you're a womanizer, you may go back to when this guy might have been, or woman might have been 16 and somebody crushed their feelings and now they don't care about people's feelings. It always comes from a place. We're not born. Like I'm going to say this because I know it's some, people on here that may not take kindly, but we're not born assholes, right? like sometimes something happens to turn you into that, right? And you gotta look at that. And as parents, since we're on the topic of your relationship with your kid, sometimes the parents don't know how to be a parent, right? We have a lot of us didn't have examples of how to do this, and it trickles down. But what you can do is you can acknowledge that you don't know how, and you can seek help. It's okay. It's okay to say I don't know, and there's people out here that know more than you do, that are trained to help you navigate, through those woods to try to get to a solution, because you are now, the guardian of a kid that's going to eventually be 35. And you got to be able to, they're going to grow up with their own experiences, but that when they're starting off with a pattern of trauma, it's hard. It's hard to see what that ends up looking like. So
it's really and hopefully you get to that point where you become self-aware and have that awakening. Yeah, that's really important. Once you get to that point, that's really the turning point. It doesn't mean that at that point everything's going to be okay, but at least if you are equipped with that, and if you're at a point where you feel like there's something wrong, or if you feel that, I don't know, like maybe kind of like you hit this brick wall or something, that's because this is what's happening at that point. This is where your mind is really trying to communicate with you. At that point, it's a great time to kind of just commune with yourself and identify what's going on. Because a lot of times, right, what happens is you thinking it's a midlife crisis and you going crazy. Nah, it's just maturation, because you know that what you're experiencing to that point, those ideals, they don't work anymore, right? And so at that point, you have a choice. You can either continue down that road, and if you continue down that road, a lot of times what's going to happen is that anger and all of those sad things that you're dealing with as far as how you deal with it. Whether it's like you're saying, like you being the player, like you say, you're being an asshole or what have you, whatever, it's going to get worse if at that point, if you don't like really sit down and identify your feelings. And unfortunately, in the society that we are in now right now, because it being so microwave, everything's pop, 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 pop. A lot of times it is set up as such where you can't just sit and commune and just kind of just reset,
Yeah.
Hey, with everything that's going on in life right now, maybe hopefully people will take heed to that as far as being able to sit,
Yeah.
and look at yourself. And so let me say this again, going off subject, but on subject. Like the hardest thing in the world, if you are looking at this podcast, the hardest thing in the world is for you to look at your own bullshit and to look at yourself in the
Yes.
mirror. Because when you
Absolutely.
do, you see you're ugly, and it's a hard pill to swallow. I'm not perfect. Hey, and I'm many of things. And I can be. I can't be that one. You know what I'm saying? I can't be an idiot. I can't be, pardon my French, I can be an asshole. I'm all of those things. But like, it's like identifying your triggers and understanding that you want more. And then how do you do that? How do you become greater? What can you do? What can you change up? How do you change your environment, right? And your environment can be friends to your home situation, to your job, environment, and so many different things that play upon it. But you have to free yourself of those shackles and those chains in order to like evolve. Because if you continue to go down that path, it's a lonely path, or it can lead to other things that are detrimental as far as health wise, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about the manifestation of that, with how that may be, with how you may be self medicating, diet, and health, where again it then that turns into something totally different, right?
Yeah.
But that's a lot of times what happens, especially with African American males, because we don't know. So like, what I'm saying, that self medicating is real.
Absolutely.
And so trust me, I'm gonna tell you, it's a very happy place in anger, because in anger, you got this energy, but that energy is so toxic and strong. But with that energy, you can just do things in a moment where it feels empowering. It feels like but all you're doing is that you are just transferring negativity and hate, and or you're really receiving it back.
Yeah.
And so unless you are a person that is not with that's a heart, that if you're a person that's heartless, or then hey, that's something totally different. But if you have a conscience and you see what you're doing, like come on, and so a lot of times when you get out of that rage, that's when you realize, oh dang, I did that. Like it's like you in the Hulk mode, and
Yeah.
and then now you're Bruce Banner. It's like, did I do that? Like, yeah, you did that. So that's part of what you're saying earlier, with as far as like tools and being able
Yeah.
to equip yourself. And like I said, look, I'm not perfect, because I had an incident. I bowed out like in a situation last year, but I knew going into the situation that I shouldn't be there. And so for that, because what happened, I had to live with the results as far as of what my actions were. So when you know it, and you know it in your heart and your body, trying, like, I'm saying, in your heart and your soul, you feel it. You really do know what your trigger points are, and that's the other thing. That's part of becoming self-aware. And when you're self-aware, taking that moment in time to kind of take a step back and to think. And I think a lot of times when you let go of your ego, at that point you can kind of rationalize and pick and choose your battles. And so that's something as a man that I still struggle with today when it comes to arguments and disagreements, with whether it be personal relationships or even with what I deal with in business and clients. And even with my own, even with my own kids, what I'm saying? It's just kind of like, all right, but it's just constant growth, constant reminder, because it's
Absolutely.
easy. it's always easy to fall back into old habits because old habits are comfortable. It's a very comfortable place. So when you go back to that comfortable place, it's easy because you know how to do it. But if you continue to strive for that new norm, it could be just as blissful. But because of the unknown, a lot of times we don't take the time and we don't really do that as far as investing in ourselves. And a lot of people just don't value that, and they just don't understand that, unfortunately. So I mean, and just speaking as far as um, you know, with my experience.
Yeah, and so we got one more little topic that a category that we're gonna do, but I do want to say this, right? Because I know somebody on here needs to hear this and understand this. So I'm gonna say this real quick, just to kind of piggyback on all of that. So when you, and I'm only talking about men, women can fall into this category. So take from it what you can. This is what you really have to understand about human behavior, about how men think. So I need you guys to catch this, right? I'm gonna sit all the way back here, and I'm gonna tell you something that you really need to hear. When you as a man have emotions, and sometimes your mental state and your emotions are tied together, and when those emotions are in, it's almost kind of like, let's look at it like this. Pretend your emotions are like a little baby that you have to hold, right? And you want to make sure that that baby is in the safest place possible. And so you pick your partners based on where that baby belongs. But what we do is we have a little dysfunctional baby, and we got to find a home for that too. And so we choose based on where that dysfunction feels happy. And sometimes we make choices based on how that fits. And so now you choose someone else who's just as dysfunctional as you, so that baby can feel safe. I'm coming up. I'm going to lean all the way back.
Kobe.
You got to take your little dysfunctional baby and make that baby feel better. You got to figure out how to do that, because at the end of the day, you're talking about, like, we're not on this earth forever. And when you choose to be in a relationship, you want to try to make smarter choices. There's always going to be some duds out there. But if you holding a dysfunctional baby, you got them on the little swaddle thing, and you carrying that thing around, that baby going to grow. It's going to get real heavy, and you still got to carry it. Right? So it's funny, but not funny, right? You got to think about, if you have a strong command of even knowing your triggers and your emotions, and maybe you get help for it to even figure out what that is. No one's saying that you'll never backslide. No one's saying that you're never going to make a mistake. But what I'm saying is, you can choose how to deal with it better if you have the right tools. That's all we're saying on here. So the last thing we're going to talk about is, when you deal with a toxic situation, and we're only going to talk about one side tonight on purpose. The question I have for you, Dre, is the person on the receiving end that you need to kind of make that space comfortable. What is something that a couple things that they can do to make that environment safe for you to feel like you can share? Does that make sense? Like, what are some of the things that a woman or whoever, whatever the situation is, could do to make you get to a point where you feel more comfortable to even talk?
That's something that I still struggle with today. And so with me, what happens is, so this is kind of hard for me. So what happens with me is that part of that defense mechanism, like when you state like the things that you do, or what have you, and you try to have somebody to recognize what those things are, and you kind of like lay that out. A lot of times, I think that, and I'm probably, of course, being situational with this, but I think that a lot of times you want that person to be able to listen to what you're saying, and then also to kind of just to see it from your standpoint. I think a lot of times, because we're wired differently, and I'm emotional, but women are emotional by nature as well. And I think that a lot of times it's kind of taking the emotion out and listen to what you're saying. I think that if you have the ability to have a non-objectional discussion where the feelings are taken out and you just listen to what the information is, I think that then whatever that situation may be, I think that it will make you, or at least for me, again, like I said, I don't know this for every man, but that's what I find out a lot of times, that if you're able to do that, it makes you more comfortable to be able to speak, because then it's like, okay, you understand the point that I'm coming from. Like, I understand what you're saying, but do you understand what I'm saying? Because if you understand what I'm saying, then you can kind of get context. And the whole thing is for both of us to have context of the other person. I think a lot of times when I get into disagreements and or arguments, I think that that's what I struggle with in it. And it very well can be, excuse me, sorry, but it very well could be me, right? So I mean, I don't know. That's something I want to grow on. But I think though for me, once that's achieved, and also in an environment where it's cool heads can prevail, where it's not that anger and energy. So, that energy is there as such where the defense mechanism and ego exists. You have to know, okay, like, walk away. That's the other thing. Because if not, nothing's going to be, nobody's going to hear the other person, right?
Right.
And so you're going to hear things. And so all that is the argument, and all you're doing in the argument is hurting the other person. And so that's what you're doing. And that's not right. So that's, for me, is just, at least for me, for, whatever future relationships I'm in, it's finding somebody that has that ability to listen and not fuel themselves in anger, so that they can receive what I'm saying, and we can listen to each other, and we can build from that. And then it's okay. And if we agree to disagree, at least we have the set of tools where we can agree to disagree, but it doesn't have to be toxic. And I think because, again, that I was speaking earlier about anger is so familiar. Anger is like a drug, because it feels good a lot of times when you're dishing it out, because you got power. Yeah. And it's just a misconstrued. It's a misconstrued. It's a misconstrued emotion. So, yeah. So that's what I'll say. I know I'm kind of zoning out. I'm trying to really get to the root of my feelings. So that's why I'm kind of looking down. I'm closing my eyes, kind of just trying to.
I know. I always say on this show, it comes from a place. Like this is what I need for you, whoever's watching. I need for you to really look at our interaction with each other, and when we share things, how you can see the emotion on his face when he's talking about it. And when I talk about things, I'm really passionate about certain things. And what you got to understand is, us being able to even talk about this in this forum is not easy. It's foreign to us because we weren't trained this way. And there's a level of relief that comes when you're able to really talk about these things that are near and dear to us. And so, to piggyback off of what he just said, and then we're going to wrap this up. The question I asked was, what was, a way that someone can make you feel more comfortable. And it's a lesson in communication overall. And so we're going to take some key words that Dre said. Judgment, right? We want non-judgmental communication. So that comes from a foundation that should have started in the beginning of the relationship. And it's a step that we normally skip over because we're in love. But we don't realize that being in a relationship requires you to come in with communication tools because we are not the same person. And so when we argue, we expect the other person to look at things the same way we do. And when they don't, we get mad. And we got to realize that we're two different people. So the discussions about your boundaries and when you get mad, are you like a yeller, or you when you start to talk about these things early, then you can kind of figure out how to navigate. We talking about love languages and all this other stuff that people talk about after they're, 20 years in. You really got to understand how to understand your partner as a foundation so that when you do get to the argument, you can say, look, we're going to breathe for a minute. And I love you. And no matter who's at fault, we are both going to work together to tackle the problem. And once you do that, and you know that you're still on the same team, as opposed to you go downstairs and sleep on the couch, because that's the solution. When you do that, newsflash, whether the person that got to go sleep on the couch is right or wrong, there's an emotion that comes with that, right? You didn't leave them. So they got to sit on that. And then the next morning, everything cool. You eating breakfast and everything cool. You never purged it. And so now, guess what? After 100 of those, then you start to see somebody going out, getting a drink, doing self-destructive behavior just to be able to try to purge some of that stuff. Because it's got to go somewhere. It's like a pressure cooker. That steam got to come out some type of way. And sometimes you got to, take some time, right? And these are things that you can establish early, right? This is something that I didn't learn, right? And we go through fire and brimstone through our lives and pain and relationships and breaking up. But, having tools, communication tools, to be able to understand how each other communicates is golden. Like, it's so many relationships that would still be together just from that simple. It's the easiest but the hardest thing, because everybody wants to have the other person see it their way. And guess what? Sometimes it's impossible for me to see it your way, but we can see it somewhere in the middle and compromise, because I'm not you. And I will never be you. Newsflash, I will never be you. But if we have the same goal, we can meet somewhere in the middle and keep it moving, because the foundation was set from the beginning. And when you provide a safe haven for a man to feel free to talk about whatever he wants to talk about without being judged, you will then see a brand new person. I guarantee it, because most of that angst and the anger comes from the inability to be listened to and to be heard in the way that you need to be. And like I said, that doesn't mean that that person is right or wrong. But if the person wants to be heard, either side, male or female, if you love them, you should allow them the opportunity to at least speak their mind. And then when you go back to that, maybe we got to separate for 10 minutes or whatever it is, to get back to the point where you respect each other. Because now we're talking about respect, right? I'm gonna step on that, and then we're going to step off, because we almost had about an hour. Respect. If a man feels disrespected, but he know he can't fight you for real, got to keep that inside, because he got to man up. You got to man up, right? You're not gonna fight for real. You're not pulling out your fist. You're not gonna call somebody out their name. You got to man up, right? There's a lot of women out there that know how to push those buttons, and you got to be like, you got it. Let's just get it over with. When a man says, let's just get it over with, that means he's hiding his emotions. Catch it. Let me say that one more time. When a man says, let's just get it over with, he is hiding his ability to share with you how he feels. Right? Let's have a moment of silence for that. That's my quotable of the day. Like, seriously,
Right.
like
Yeah.
we want. Okay, we back, I think. Okay, we good. It looked like it froze for a minute. But that's some real, like, that's a gem right there. And most men do this. And I don't even know most men. I'm telling you, most men do this. We want to get it out the way and done so we can get back to peace, right? That is the paramount thing. We want peace by any means necessary, right? So I'm going to give you a real super nugget, and then we're going to get out of here. We're going to let Dre tell us what he got going on. Here's your super nugget of the day. Peace is the most important thing to a man. And we will get that peace if that peace means if there's a toxic environment and I got to sit outside for an hour before I come in the house, I'm going to get my peace. If I got to go hang out with the fellas 3 nights a week and I know that it's taken away from my family, I'm going to get my peace because I don't want to be around toxic energy. And then you're sitting at home as the woman, like, I wonder why I guess he needs to get out. He's getting out because he doesn't have a safe haven to come home to that's not judgmental. I hope y'all heard me. Does that mean that he's always right? No, but I am teaching you the behavior patterns. This is what it looks like. And the more time that passes, the more detached you become because you cannot communicate. And then it starts to turn into other things. You can get to this fast and early as long as you are able to have the dialogue so that that person doesn't start resenting you. When they start resenting you, they're going to come home. They're going to take the kids to the football game. They're going to bring the money home. But it's still not peaceful. And y'all going to take some really good pictures on Facebook too. It's going to look real cute. Y'all go on vacation. It's going to look good. It's still not peaceful. Hear my words. It's still not peaceful because he does not have the ability to share how he really feels. So we're going to leave with that. Any last words, Dre, on the topic? And then we're going to talk about you and what you got going on and how to contact you.
Nah, brother. I think you did a good job. I can't follow that. So
look. So let me tell you this.
I can't do that.
Let ladies listen to me real quick, okay? You see how I just rolled all of that out and Dre didn't have anything to dispute? It's because we all share a kinship. Most of us feel like this. You'll just never hear it. Think about it. Most men, when we sit in a room, we have similar stories. You got to ask yourself why. And I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying there's a piece missing. Maybe he needs to get some guidance on it. Maybe you both do. But we all have similar stories. There's never been a group of guys that I've been in where we all did not have, and I'm sure you can agree, Dre, we all have similar stories with relationships.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. So we're going to leave with that.
Sure.
Let everybody know how they can contact you. And I can't even say if you got anything coming up because everything's shut down. But
yeah, man. Trust me, I had like 2 concerts and 2 other events lined up. Man, I'm hurting right now.
I know.
Yeah, I took a bad hit, man. But yeah, so as far as with me, you can always reach me on my website, www.adstmusic.com. I'm about to relaunch my ADST Media website, but social media, all things ADST Music. You can also find me on ADST Media. That's where, as far as the events, different things we're pushing with my clients and artists. You can find on that page on social media. I believe that's it. If you want to contact me directly, feel free. You can email me at contact.adst@gmail.com. So yeah, we're just trying to weather the storm right now. So, I hope everyone is safe. But yeah, so, we have some things in motion, but like with all of us, we're just trying to, evaluate this day by day to kind of see how we can adjust. So until then, it's kind of like, we're in a holding pattern. I was supposed to shoot. Look, we were going to shoot a video this weekend. Can't shoot the video this weekend. We were supposed to have a concert on the same day. Can't do the concert. So yeah, it's just like I said. It's just a trickle down effect. It's affecting all of us.
Yeah. So I am going to, for the listeners, I'm going to put his contact information in the show notes for the podcast, which is the audio version, and then for the people that are watching visually, we'll put it in the comments up under the live. So on that note, we're gonna let you go, sir. I appreciate you and your time and your candidness and all of that kind of stuff. I'm sure that there's a lot of people on here that were able to kind of get some good information tonight. And we'll see you again. It's not like we don't talk every day, right?
Right. No doubt.
All right, sir.
All right.
I'm closing it.
Okay, appreciate you, brother.
Well, at least close this portion now. Hang on for a second, okay? Let me go back to the full screen. Okay, so thank you everybody for listening, and I hope you have a great day or night, and we will see you next time because I got some pop-ups coming up, so stay tuned, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. All right, we're off. So I want to bring Dre up real quick. So if anybody has any questions or comments, this is the time. Because we're off the podcast now. And I'm just the people that I see, Brandywine, Alicia, Michelle Ford, Tanya Brunson was here earlier. And I think Lady T from Periscope is here, Pamela Thomas, Tasha Carpenter, Natasha Davenport. Thank you guys. Replay viewers, thank you too. So if you have any comments, Alicia says, love the show. Brandywine says this was great. Michelle Ford says, great show. So, we just you guys need to understand there's so many things out here that we can learn from each other. There's sometimes we touch things on the surface, right? So I'll give you a quick example. Someone could say, y'all just need to communicate better. But then there's tools. There's tools that go along with that. And then you gotta, what I always try to do is I try to help you understand not just what to do, but how it feels. How are you feeling? Once you get to the feels of it, and you understand those feelings and your intelligence about your emotion goes higher, then now we can really have a dialogue about how you go about fixing it. But first, you got to understand your emotions and your thought process first. And that's why I do what I do here. We're going to have some guests along the way. But I really like to bring people on here to not just talk, but I want you to feel the passion from their voice. I want you to hear their story so that you can really understand. The primary thing of why I do this is I want you to know that you are not alone. There's people out here that feel just like you. And it's possible to get over that hump so that you can get to a better place and live your life to the best of your ability. Alicia says it's always good to hear a man's perspective. We also need to have female version of this because it goes both ways. You're right. And I may facilitate something like that. Even though, I'm a guy, but I can get a few guests on here and just kind of have a dialogue. We can do that. That's a good idea, Alicia. Yeah. I might have to do that because if we don't hear this information, we go years and years in dysfunction and not knowing how to talk to somebody. And like I said, we're not here forever. We're not here on this earth forever. We need to get it together. So if there's no questions or comments, Dre, I see Dre put his contact information in the live. So just if you want to contact him about music production. Give me the list of it, Dre.
Yeah, so music production, artist consultation, promotion, marketing, strategy. We do it all.
Okay.
We do it all as far as being able to empower artists as far as increasing their reach. And the main thing is teaching them how to monetize.
Cool. So we're gonna wrap it up. Brandywine, I'm gonna inbox you after this because we definitely can collaborate on something. So yeah, we're gonna get out of here.
Brandy, that's my homegirl, Brandy. What up, Brandy?
Yeah, I'm gonna get in contact with Brandy so we can collaborate on something because I'm all about, you know, we gotta do this together, man. Nobody can do it by themselves. So yeah. PSA, wash your hands, wash your butt, do whatever you gotta do to make sure you're safe, take care of your family and all that. Quarantine doesn't mean that it's an indictment on your sanity. Try to learn how to love yourself. I'm going to upload 2 podcasts tonight. And the first one I did earlier today is about just taking the time to become more self-aware about yourself while you're in this quarantine. You got time, like Dre kind of alluded to earlier. This is a time where you can actually do a lot of self-reflection and figuring out where you need to be and who you are. So just think about that. And if you don't know the steps to take, just, hit me up. The website is www.mrcardlogic.net. That'll also be in the show notes on the podcast. Podcast is going to go up tonight, but you'll see it in the morning. Just search for Relationship Gumbo on anywhere that you can get a podcast. Matter of fact, hold on one second. I think I got hold on one second here. Because I got my toys. Hold on one second. Bam. So you can go to anywhere that you can get that you can get podcasts. It's probably like 10 more places that I'm at from the last time I did this thing. But normally people are on like Apple, Spotify, Google, stuff like that. I'm on Pandora. I'm everywhere. So just search for Relationship Gumbo. You'll find me. So let me get this off the screen here. And we're going to get out of here. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And we will see you. I'm going to try to come on. We on quarantine. I'm going to try to come on tomorrow at some point and do something fun. Like this was a serious topic. I'm going to try to do something fun tomorrow. I got to figure out what that looks like. So until then, you guys have a great night and we will see you soon. Good night.
Good night.